Hello and welcome to a fantastic Tuesday afternoon here on Baby Yum Yum, our Instagram. And today, very, very exciting, we in fact will be talking to Dr. Michael Mol about bedwetting. Today is International Bedwetting Day, and when you think about bedwetting, what is it that you think of? You think about your child making wheeze in bed. You think about insecurities that your child may have. You think about your child having a nightmare. You think about all of these sort of things, but there are obviously real issues behind this, and there are in fact ways to deal with this and to help your child. And we'll speak to our expert just now who's going to be joining us, Dr. Michael Mol, and we will get from him the insights as to why this happens, what causes it, how to prevent it, and how to actually deal with this. Is it a problem? Is it not a problem? Up until what age is this actually a problem for children to be bedwetting? And when, up until what stage should you in fact be concerned? So I see lots of people joining our conversation this afternoon. This clearly is something that's a very, very hot topic. So we are just waiting for our guest, Michael Mol, to join us. You may know that very good-looking celebrity face from a lot of TV programs and a lot of opportunities where audiences arise. So we're just waiting for him to join us. Gosh, the people are just joining and joining. Thank you very much for joining us. So little touching base for you. I'm Amanda Rogaly. I'm the founder and CEO of Baby Yum Yum. And for me, it's very important to get to the crux of the matter and educate and empower you, our parents, on Baby Yum Yum. So just waiting here for Dr. Michael Mol to join us. Here we go. I see he has in fact sent his request. Please do, everybody, send us through your questions. I have a load of questions to ask Dr. Michael Mol. Please do ask your questions. Dr. Michael Mol, welcome.
Amanda, it is good to see you.
And likewise, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's great to chat to you. Super.
Good.
How are you, Amanda?
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm very fabulous. Thank you. So you must be very busy considering the fact that today is bedwetting day. I mean, what kind of a day is that? So you must be very interesting, very busy the whole day asking questions and solving people's bedwetting issues, problems. Are they problems? What do we call them, Michael? What is the problem? What is bedwetting? What is it all about? Take me through it.
So, Amanda, firstly, thank you for the opportunity. It is World Bedwetting Day, and as a former bedwetter, this is very close to my heart. And it's close to my heart because it's an opportunity to educate parents on exactly what bedwetting is, and it certainly isn't anything your child can help. I mean, that's the big issue, really. I mean, I love the title of your Insta Live was the connection between flossing and bedwetting. I mean, what is that? Let me jump straight into that. Flossing. In fact, yeah. I mean,
there are so many
as you're watching this,
bedwetting.
Exactly. So when it comes to flossing, the question is, do you floss? And if you're putting your hand up at home going, yeah, that's me, I'm a regular flosser. My next question to you is, why do you floss? Because science has now shown us that flossing, and I mean this, not the dance, science has now shown us, really, Amanda, that flossing has got little to no impact on preventing gum disease or cavities. So it sounds like a good idea, and it different. And this could be said with bedwetting. It almost makes sense as a parent, and one of my children was a bedwetter too. You're so frustrated. It feels like this child won't listen to me, won't pay attention to what we're saying, and continues to wet his bed. And I'm going to say he most of the time because it affects twice as many boys as girls. And you're almost kind of going to want to say, well, then this child needs to be punished. We need to kind of, make an example, or we need to do something to get him to stop wetting his bed. And the point really, and this is one of the biggest issues around World Bedwetting Day, is it is not your child's fault. It's never your child's fault. So a child should never be punished or shamed for wetting their bed. And I'm sure, Amanda, and I'll shut up now because, getting a word edgeways in on World Bedwetting Day is, and I'm sure the parents that are watching this are kind of saying, but I would never punish my child. And I'm so glad to hear that. But studies and statistics show that 50% of children are being physically punished for wetting their bed. And that's why I love the fact that there's World Bedwetting Day, because you and I get to stand up and talk about this. Parents.
Absolutely. Michael, I think, you mentioned that you said that there's that statistic where some kids are actually physically being punished because of bedwetting. And you hear about the cases where the kids wake up in the morning, the bed is soaking wet, and kids either have to strip the whole bed and make the bed themselves, or they get other types of punishment because they are naughty for wetting their bed at night. But you'll agree with me, and I'm sure you'll take us through the studies and the fact that there are so many causes behind bedwetting. It's not like kids are out there to punish you and make you change bed sheets in the middle of the freezing cold night, because let's be honest, kids do that, and we've all had those nights if you have kids obviously of a certain age. So Michael, just a quick question. So now we've spoken about the flossing. So in your experience, what exactly is bedwetting, and at what age do you say a child is a bedwetter, as opposed to it's just a toddler who is, can't hold their bladder control?
Sure. So, Amanda, when we talk about bedwetting, the official medical term is nocturnal enuresis, and it's defined as the unintentional passage of urine while a child is asleep, with a big emphasis being on unintentional. All right. So your child does not lie in bed, eyes wide awake, thinking, I don't feel like going to the toilet, I'm just going to wet my bed. It happens unintentionally. That's really important to know. I mean, you were talking about punishments earlier.
Okay.
The gentleman came up to me after I'd spoken to someone and said, you know what my parents used to do? They used to put the mattress on the back of the bucky and drive me to school to show everyone the wet spot to try and get me to stop wetting my bed. I mean, he was my age and he still relayed that story. So you can imagine the impact that has. So,
and I'm sure at that age, the stress that came with it and the humiliation, embarrassment created even more bedwetting. So it was just a vicious cycle to obviously humiliate and punish your child like
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. So I'll be saying that a lot in the next couple of minutes. But Amanda, to your second question, what causes bedwetting? So just to kind of get your kids off the hook. I know as parents, there's so much to feel guilty about. I'm going to add one more thing to make you feel guilty about, and I'll take it away a little later. But, the question I get often asked is it my fault that my child is wetting the bed? And the answer is, well, kind of, because there is a genetic predisposition. So if one of mom or dad were a bedwetter, your child has around a 50% chance of wetting the bed. If both mom and dad were, you're looking at 75% odds. So yes, mom and dad, it is kind of your fault, just a little bit. Not that you could do anything about it. But
gosh,
we'll come back to the moment.
Because when you were going to say that it's the parents' fault, I was immediately going to think people think that children wetting their beds is a sign of childhood insecurity. So what have I done as a parent? Did I not give my child enough love today? Did I not stroke their heads enough time? Why are they weighing in bed? But as you've pointed out now, obviously, the emotional side of it is one factor, but the genetic and hereditary side is another factor. And tell me, is this, these sort of studies that have come about now, they're obviously quite recent, because obviously the perception and the stigma attached to bedwetting clearly has changed over the past few years. And having ambassadors like you on board to promote something like Bedwetting Day really has changed the perception that people have about bedwetters.
Absolutely, man. And so important to do just that. I mean, it really, as we said, it isn't your child's fault, and so there should be no shame and no punishment. I mean, to come back to that original question around the causes of bedwetting, there are essentially three main reasons. So your child wets their bed because either they have a small bladder, all right, as they get older, their bladder gets bigger, has greater capacity, can hold more urine. That's an obvious one. The second reason is your child is not producing enough of the hormone that tells your kidneys to produce less urine at night. It's a hormone called vasopressin. Don't need to remember that, but essentially it's a hormonal thing. And as you get older, your body produces more of the hormone, and that hormone tells your kidneys at night, hey, stop producing so much urine, and you don't produce urine, and your bladder doesn't get that full. And the third reason that kids wet their bed is they have an inability to wake up when their bladder is full. So that kind of brain-bladder connection needs to mature. And again, that's just a physical maturation thing. So when we talk about bedwetting, we don't talk about disease or condition, or I mean, it's a physical part of growing up. And 99% of kids, and I say that with all the science behind it, Amanda, 99% of kids are going to grow out of bedwetting. The current statistics are 1% of adolescents wet their beds at night. And for those 1%, it's awful. I get that. But for those of us who are going through, kids between the ages of 5 and 10, let's say, who are wetting their beds, it's a comforting statistic to know that 99% of kids are going to get through this.
And as you say that, I can almost feel our followers going, "Phew, it's okay, my child's not going to wet the bed until they're 21. No one's going to marry them because they wet the bed at night." So, phew, baby Yum Yum followers, you've got comfort knowing that your child will grow out of it. So I think if we can obviously just look at the question is, and you spoke about children between the age of 5 and 10. When children get to the age of 10, or let's say 11, and they are still wetting their bed, is there reason to be concerned then? When do you start taking actions and start running around to pediatricians and GPs and urologists and wherever else you might take your children to actually find the cause of a problem? At what stage does a parent become concerned?
Yeah, so there were two answers to that, Amanda. Expect a child to have bladder control around the age of 6, okay, between 5 and 6. So if you think about that, if you'd come to me and say, hey, my child's a bedwetter at night, and you tell me your child is 4, I'm going to say, no, your child's not a bedwetter. We don't expect your child to have a mature bladder by the age of 4. It's from the ages of 5 to 6, all right? The other thing about bedwetting is it needs to be at least twice a week. So again, you can't say to someone, I've got a bedwetter, wets their bed twice a month. No, it needs to be at least twice a week for it to become a bedwetter. So it must be older than 5, must be twice a week. Okay. When am I concerned? I would say there are 2 reasons for concern. Firstly, I think beyond the age of 7, if your child is still wetting their bed and you haven't taken him or her to see a pediatrician or a urologist, I think by the age of 7, it's worth going to do some sort of workup to see if there's any other reason possibly for them wetting the bed. The other reason you would intervene and be proactive about a child wetting their bed is the impact that it has on your child's self-esteem. So for some kids, wet their bed, it's no issue. It's like, but so what? I know, my mom told me that at least 4 or 5 other kids in my class are wetting their bed, which is true. 1 in 6 kids between the ages of 5 and 10 are wetting their bed. That's how common it is, And for those kids, no problem. But if your child is really being affected by this bedwetting, you can see their self-esteem is damaged. You can see the value and how they see themselves is really deteriorating. That's when you step in as a parent and you do everything you can do to help them through this season.
And Michael, spot on, because we all know that children can be the cruelest beings on this earth to each other. They can stigmatize each other, bully and tease each other. And this is a perfect opportunity when they find out that their friends are bedwetting, obviously to try and bully against them. But the fact that now, obviously, we're raising the fact that, weeing once every month in your bed does not make you a bedwetter.
Absolutely.
So I think that's something, obviously, that we need to be classified. And we've just had a question here from someone. Someone wanted to know, you spoke about in the difference between boys versus girls. Can you just go through that stat? Who is likely more to be a bedwetter? And for those people that have just joined us now, thank you very much. We're talking to Dr. Michael Mol about bedwetting. What is bedwetting, and how do we try and fix the problem, change the self-esteem of a child? What things can in fact be done, and what are the causes of it? So just going back to my question, differences between boys and girls. Who's more likely to wet the bed, boys or girls?
So the answer is quite simply boys. Twice as many boys are affected by bedwetting than girls. You're going to ask me why? I'm going to say we don't know. We really don't know why boys are more affected. They just are. So we kind of accept that as is.
And is it not a hormone Is it not a hormone thing that potentially could make it boys versus girls?
It could well be, but remember at that age, hormones don't really come into play as much as they do when your kids hit adolescence. So we really don't know, man. If we did know, there'd be a study to prove it and show it, and we can kind of dive into that, but we just don't. Boys more than girls. It's probably worth knowing that there's 2 kinds of bedwetting. In fact, maybe to get a little technical for a moment, in medical terms, we define bedwetting as monosymptomatic nocturnal enuresis, in other words, just one symptom, or non-monosymptomatic, in other words, more symptoms. Now, the bedwetting that you and I are talking about right now is just monosymptomatic. It's just the one thing. My child wets the bed at night. The more than one symptom are usually children that have daytime incidents. So very wet underwear, go to the toilet 8-10 times a day. There's a bit of leakage. Those are children that often need to be seen by a urologist or pediatrician. That's non-monosymptomatic, and that needs to be seen by a doctor. The predominant bedwetting statistic is those with monosymptomatic. And in those kinds, there are 2 kinds. There's primary and secondary. So a primary bedwetter is a child who's never been dry at night, for more than 6 months. All right. A secondary bedwet is a child that's been dry for 6 months at least, and then starts to wet their bed again. And the causes of secondary bedwetting differ from the causes of primary. 75% of kids, primary, 25% secondary. And the secondary causes you mentioned earlier, Amanda, is usually the psychological ones. There's a new sibling in the family, there's divorce, there is bullying at school, those kinds of things. That's when red flags go up and say, there's something happening here. Yeah.
Understand. Okay. All right. So my child is a bedwetter and they are approaching the age of 8 or 9. What do I do? Just for instance, I have a boy, let's pretend, and he's approaching 8 or 9 and he has been consistently bedwetting. How do I deal with it? What do I do? Do I freak out and phone every possible medical practitioner I can find? Do I do a Dr. Google? Or do I just phone Dr. Michael Mol? Well, in my case, I would just phone Dr. Michael Mol. But for those people that can't,
and you're welcome to, Amanda. You know that.
Thank you. What do people do in that sort of case? How do you deal with a bedwetting child?
Again, coming back to what I said earlier, if it's not affecting your child's self-esteem, you can go with a wait and see, although beyond the age of 7, I suggest we go see a doctor. If it really is affecting your child's self-esteem, take a proactive approach. So the wait and see conservative approach, that's the usual kind of things we do as a parent that are almost logical. So, limit fluids before bedtime, and only 2 hours before bedtime. Certainly don't limit fluids during the day. You want your child to drink as much as possible. You want that bladder capacity to increase. So lots of fluids during the day. 2 hours before bedtime, you start to limit fluid intake. And I know most kids at that age, oh, mommy, just before I go to bed, can I have some water, a glass of water? A little sip here or there, that's fine. But generally, you want to limit that. Obviously, avoiding their bladders before bedtime, again, that's a no-brainer. There is some science around low protein and low salt for dinner. That might increase, sort of urine retention or kidney activity. Avoid caffeinated drinks. So you're kind of going, well, who gives their kids coffee at night? No one does, but there's caffeine in some teas. There's certainly caffeine in hot chocolate. So we need to be careful of what we give our kids. And then the obvious kind of conservative ones are just make it easy for your kids to get to the bathroom in the evenings. I mean, we don't think there are, but kids know there are monsters everywhere, around every corner, and especially in the dark. So we're going to make it really easy for them to get access to the bathrooms. But those are conservative approaches, and that's kind of as we sort of assist our child through the season. And the other thing that you can do, and again, some of the red flags that come up is when your child is not being teased, but your child's already saying, look, I don't want to go and have a sleepover with my friends, or I don't want friends to come and sleep over here because they're afraid, and there's that anxiety that what if my friends come to stay over and then I wake up and I've wet the bed, wet the sheets, that's terrible. There are
absolutely, and that's actually one of the questions. That's one of the questions that in fact have come through from one of the viewers that are watching us is, how do you in fact prepare your child who is in fact a bedwetter for school trips or sleepovers or those weekends where they need to stay at their grandparents? What can we do? How can you make a child feel more comfortable from an emotional level, and B, obviously from a physical level? What sort of things can we put in place?
Sure. Well, let's quickly talk emotional. So I think first and foremost, to let your child know that this is common. All right. Most kids don't talk about this. There's no discussions at school. And, hey, I'm wetting my bed. What about you? That doesn't happen. So it's not talked about. There's stigma. So
and what did you say? Sorry, Michael. What did you say before? You said that there's 1 in 5 children who are classified as bedwetters. So it really is very, very common. So the chances are your child look around their colleagues, not their colleagues, so to speak, their peer group. In their peer group, there are other children who are going through it. And there are, just as a note for the parents, there are other parents that are having to go through this great anxiety and this process of working out what the problem is with their children. So parents, you are not alone. Thank you for telling us that, Dr. Mol.
Yes.
Okay,
no,
sorry.
You're so right.
You were saying about pull-ups and sleepovers. Yes, okay.
But to your point, so 1 in 6, I mean, a class of 24, there are 4 kids wetting their beds. We know that. I mean, that's how common this really is. So firstly, it's common. Let your kids know that. Secondly, let them know it's not their fault. So they can't control this. This is nothing, and that doesn't necessarily take the anxiety away. It just takes the guilt or the shame away. The third thing you can do physically is, particularly for the sleepover, pull-ups are really useful. They're not nappies, they're pull-ups, they're thinner, they're super absorbent. And it's something that takes away the anxiety of not knowing whether I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning, with a wet mattress or not. they're quiet, they're super absorbent, and they can literally be disposed of very easily, very quickly. I would let the mom or granny, whoever's, your child is sleeping over, know about that, just so they're aware as well. But that takes away all the anxiety of people are going to find out, and then what I do, because you can't hide.
But Michael, wait, just stop right there. You're telling me about pull-ups. Now you're expecting my child of however old to go and wear a big nappy, so to speak. So what is the difference between a nappy and pull-ups? Are pull-ups more discreet? What's the catch here?
I think you used the right word. Discreet is a big difference between the two. So this is not a big, bulky, noisy nappy. This is just a discreet, absorbent, very quiet pull-up. And, I mean, we don't like to call them nappies. They're essentially pull-ups. And it's something just to say together as a family. It's not, it's not something we want to need to do, but rather this than stay at home and not go and see your friends and not hang out. So that's one option. The other thing you can do, and this is the kind of proactive approach, is to say there is medication that can be used. Now, the most common medication is something called desmopressin, which is a synthetic variant of the hormone vasopressin. And all that really does is kind of, it enhances, or rather tells your child's kidneys not to produce excessive amounts of urine at night. So when you use that medication for that evening, he's not going to be producing a lot of urine. So it works that night. It doesn't cure children from bedwetting. It's not something that once you take it and it works, you can stop. This is just a medication that assists your child through the season of bedwetting. If on one night you take these tablets and it works, and the next night you stop, he's going to go back to wetting his bed. That's just the nature of it. Remember, it's not a thing that needs to be cured. It's not actually going to change.
It's not going to change the behavior. I'm with you. Okay, no, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And again, remember, it's not a behavioral thing. It's a maturation thing. So yeah.
Correct. Absolutely. 100%. And just tell me, and what about all of apart from the pull-ups, what about all of the ridiculous things you see on the market, which, let's be honest, I know that some of the parents that are watching this have in fact tried it, all those different things, clocks that shake up your children and wake them up at a certain time of night, or noises that go off, or, there's so many different things that are on the market to try and get through this maturation process, so to speak. Do those things actually work? Like, we've spoken about the pulls, but what about the alarm that goes off and wakes your child, or the water that falls on their head at a certain time? What is that kind of story? What happens with that?
So let me talk to two of those aspects. All right. The first one is bedwetting alarms. All right. Remember, one of the causes of a child wetting their bed at night is an inability to wake when they have a full bladder. All right. That kind of brain bladder maturation. That's when alarms can come in really useful and really helpful. They work in about 2/3 of kids, but they take a good couple of months for the effect of the alarm to take effect, and requires a lot of motivation, because those alarms don't only wake kids, they wake parents as well. So
the whole
there's
house,
lots of frustration. Exactly. I'm like, oh no, there it goes again. But that's all part of assisting a child who's a deep sleeper, essentially. Okay. The other thing that waking your child up, at certain times, or alarm clocks that go off, we call that lifting. A lot of parents will put their kids to sleep at 8, and by 10 o'clock or 10:30, when they go to bed, they wake their children up, take them to the loo, empty their bladders, back to sleep, and think they're doing a good deal. We call that lifting, and what that does is in fact prolong the season of bedwetting. You need your child to wake up when their bladder is full, not when your bladder is full. So what we suggest to parents is don't do that to your kids. They need to wake up when their bladder is full. And if you keep emptying that bladder and they never get the experience of a full bladder, you're just going to prolong the season. So don't lift.
Okay, absolutely. Don't lift. We've got that. Make a note. # don't lift. We agree with that. And just tell me, what sort of long-term impact does bedwetting have on a child? Now, Dr. Mol, you spoke about the fact that you were in fact a bedwetter. Up until what age did you wet your bed, and what effect did it have on you from a long-term point of view?
So I wet my bed until about the age of 7. My poor mom would often wake me up, or not wake me up, but would get me up in the middle of the night and get me to wash my sheets before I went back to bed, just to get me to stop doing
There
this.
you go.
I don't hold a grudge against her. She just didn't know back then
There
what
you
we
go.
know now.
They didn't
Exactly.
know.
So
Absolutely.
no, they didn't know. And so there is no ways I'm going to kind of hold that against her. And I certainly am not going to therapy and, you know, none of that. But that said, and I say this very seriously, Amanda, is what we do know from studies. There are two huge impacts that bedwetting has on a child. Firstly, children who wet their beds have a higher risk of developing depression and anxiety later on in life. A higher
Understandably
risk of depression, which
so.
is huge.
You can,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's
And the
that stigma
second,
that's attached, yeah.
exactly. And the second big issue is self-esteem. Children who wet their beds see themselves as being of less value than their peers. And you and I both know the importance of a child's self-esteem, of good body image,
Absolutely.
all of that in terms of just thriving at school. And for a bedwetter to have that thrust upon them, something that they have no control over, to really impact their self-image is just sad to see. So from a parent's perspective, I'd like to say to parents, don't worry about the wet sheets. Worry about your child's self-esteem. Do whatever you
Correct.
can do to build up your child's self-esteem. Make sure they're not feeling the impact of that. You know, make a joke about it. Make light of it. Don't make it an issue. Because
Correct.
if it becomes an issue, those are the long-term effects. It's not wet sheets. It's the long-term effects of self-esteem that really impact on you. And my dad wrote a book about parenting. Can you believe it? I mean, I was a teenager at the time. I'm like, who does that? You know, surely you wait until your kids are out of home and you get lucky with their success and then you write it. But he did, and his big thing was self-image, Amanda. I mean, he said, you know, parents often asked him, so if you wanted to be a successful parent, how do you measure your success in parenting? And he just said, I've got two measures. You know, if my kids leave home one day with a healthy self-image and a strong faith, I've been a successful parent. And that was his yardstick. But that was how important self-image was to him.
Absolutely. And I think both you and I are very lucky where we come from homes where confidence is a very important factor. I know in my household also, my mother always said to me, my father always said to me, when you leave home, the biggest skill that they can give you is confidence and a good self-image.
Yeah.
And we come from those homes. But what about those homes where there aren't that sort of self-confidence and that great self-image that's projected onto your children? And, you know, as we spoke again about the punishment. So just going back to that, why is punishment not a good way to stop your child from bedwetting? And we touched on this at the beginning of the conversation, but we have had some more people joining us now. So I just really want to focus on this because I think that this is almost like an easy way out for parents to blame it on the child and to give the child some sort of punishment for wetting their bed at night. So tell me, we've addressed the fact that punishment is not the good way to go. Why is punishment never a good way to stop a child from bedwetting?
Well, let me give you this analogy, Amanda. Punishing a child for bedwetting is like saying to your son, hey boy, come here, you're getting a hiding because you've got brown eyes. I mean, they had no say in having brown eyes. No,
absolutely.
they can't. Absolutely. So it's unintentional. It is not their fault. They're not doing it on purpose. They're not doing it to irritate or bother you. They cannot help themselves. And so to be punished for something you cannot help, obviously has a huge impact on your self-esteem. But to those parents that are punishing their kids, a bit like lifting, if you punish your child, you're going to get more wet nights and a longer season of bedwetting than if you don't punish your child. I mean, that should be reason enough.
So by punishing your child, you're actually going to end up punishing yourself. So
well said.
There you go. There's the
very
circle.
tweetable. Very tweetable.
Very
Amanda
tweetable. Please take that down. So another quick question there, and this has come up quite a few times, is does poor potty training lead to bedwetting?
Another guilty parent, my word. I blew it in potty training. Does that mean my child's going to be a bedwetter? I've got good news for you. You can alleviate your guilt. There is no connection between potty training and bedwetting. So if you really think you messed up in potty training and didn't do the best thing, didn't do a great job of it, don't worry about it.
Failed as a parent.
No impact.
Don't worry, you didn't fail as a parent.
No way. No, you didn't. And there's no impact on bedwetting whatsoever.
All right, great. So Michael, really just summing it up. So if your child is a bedwetter, work with them through the emotional side. Don't give them a stigma. Help them know that it's okay. Other kids are suffering from it too. Try and alleviate drinking of water. Did you say 2 hours before bedtime?
2 hours before bedtime. Yeah.
2 hours. So they can have a little sip before bedtime if they're dying from thirst, because we all know kids love to get up and extend that going to bedtime by going to get the glass of water or a this or a that. So they can have that sip of that. So there is that normality there. And caffeinated items and drinks, you said we stay away from those. And as you mentioned as well, is very, very important. No lifting. Don't wake your child to go and make a wee, because their behavioral change is not going to happen in terms of from a maturity point of view if you don't let the body actually learn for itself when the bladder is full. And most importantly as well is that, you know, if you are battling through the stage, there are alternatives to help you through this. And you mentioned one of the ones now that, you know, we never had when we were younger, that now is popular and it's out in the stores and it's available from the retail stores, and that's pull-ups. And I think that's, you know, and to those who have just followed us now, pull-ups really are discreet pants to wear at night, and I suppose you can almost liken them to pajama pants, so to speak. And I think that's maybe a good way to actually introduce it into your yes, underpants, and to introduce it into your family, that it's not something, it's not as if it's a personal hygiene item that you're going to buy from the store. It's more like an accessory to your pajamas or to your clothing. So I think to try and find the side behind that as well. So yes, there is hope for those that have children who are bedwetting. Your children will grow out of it, unless obviously there's some sort of medical problem behind that, where, you know, it's the best and suggested that you actually do contact your pediatrician or your urologist or your GP. But for those that are just going through a maturation process and maybe a little bit slower in that maturation process, please, by all means, go and look out for the things that help you. And obviously the pull-ups are the number one thing to start using to try and get you through the stage. Just a quick question for you, Dr. Mol, there's a question that's come through here. My friend is 17 and still pees in her bed. She is afraid to tell her parents. How do we help her?
Sure. That is a tough one. That's the 1% of adolescents we talked about that still do wet their beds at night. Really, really tough condition to live with and to live through. I would encourage her to get hold of her parents and just to actually, I mean, it's easier said than done, of course, but this is something a family needs to manage, and it needs to be managed by a professional and a health expert. And I imagine at 17, she doesn't have direct access to a family doctor, or as you said, a urologist or a pediatrician. In this instance, I think a urologist would probably be the best person to go to. So I would definitely just say to her mom and dad, look, I mean, this is what's happening to me. I listened to a medical doctor, you know, on Baby Yum Yum, who said it's not my fault. It's not something I can do anything about. I'm not drinking. I'm not smoking anything. I'm not doing drugs. It's just a body that hasn't matured yet. Please help. And I can't imagine any parents are going to get upset about that.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, we all want the best for our children, for their emotional well-being, for their physical well-being, and in today's age where there are some resources to help us get through that, and as we always say at Baby Yum Yum, we help to make the parenting journey blissful. That is why we have discussions like this. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Mol. Are there any other insights or any other information bits that you'd like to share with us or give to our followers and our community about bedwetting?
Well, firstly, Amanda, well summed up, by the way. I loved how you summed up what we discussed today in about 2 minutes. That's like, wow. You know, if you guys missed everything, Amanda just put it out there in 2 minutes.
Push play.
Yes. Maybe a story to close off with, Amanda. Thomas Edison, famous inventor, when he was bedwetting age, and I'm not saying he was a bedwetter, we don't know that, you know, history doesn't tell us that, but he came home one day from school with a letter that he gave to his mom. He said, Mom, this is a letter from my teachers. They said, I must give it to you. Only you must read it. You know, what does it say? And his mom opened the letter up and she sort of got tears in her eyes and she read the letter to Thomas. She said, the letter says, your son is a genius. He is too clever for our teachers to teach him. Would you please teach him from here on out? And that's what Thomas's mother did for the next, you know, number of years. She homeschooled him, and years later she obviously
homeschooled him.
She did. There you go.
Wow. So to everyone else who's currently homeschooling, they did it before us, and they'll do it after us. Just hang in there for the rest of lockdown. Sorry, push play.
And no, that's fine. And look what happened to Thomas Edison, you know, from homeschooling. But years later, he after his mom passed away, he was going through her goods and found the letter. You know, and he opened up the envelope and he read the letter, and the letter said this: your son is mentally deficient. We do not want to teach him in this school. He is expelled. And he wrote that day in his journal. Thomas Edison became the greatest inventor of the 21st century because his mother believed in him. And his mother believed he could be. And I tell you that story because At that age, kids are so impressionable when it comes to what their mom and dads think. And if you as a parent take on this bedwetting season with aplomb and with confidence and with, it's not an issue, my boy, your child will take that on. If it becomes an issue,
absolutely, so well said. Absolutely, so beautifully summed up. Thank you so much. And because I always like to get the last word in. To that point, I have read something beautiful the other day, and it said there was a little child, and she said to her mother, "Mommy, if I jump off this brick wall, what happens if I fall?" And the mother turned around and said, "Jump off the brick wall, because what happens if you fly?" And I think that really just sums up what you've said about giving your child confidence and a great self-esteem. So Dr. Michael Mol, thank you so much for joining us today and answering our questions. And of course, on the Baby Yum Yum portal, whether it's the website, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whichever platform you prefer, via email, send us through your questions. And of course, we are very happy to pass them on to the legendary Michael Mol and get some answers for you. And we will revert on that. Dr. Mol, thank you so much for joining us today, and have a wonderful afternoon.
No, thank you, Amanda. Great spending time with you and your followers. And again, I so appreciate you highlighting such a key issue. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. And thank you very much to our followers for joining us. Keep staying with us, supporting us, and be an empowered parent. Thank you so much. Thanks, Michael.
Brilliant.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Amanda. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye. Great. So let's get that remove Dr. Michael Mol there. So thank you very, very much to everyone who has in fact been following us, and look out every week for great series of discussions that we will be having. As today we mentioned was our discussion on bedwetting with Dr. Mol. Send through your questions that you may still have if you missed any of the information that we gave out there. And please, we will endeavor to get back to you, because this is really a very, very important topic that does need, in fact, to be dealt with. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon, and be safe, sanitize, remember all those things about social distancing and coronavirus and COVID, and stick to all of that, and let's be a healthy and strong and empowered society.